And anticipation, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You did very well with trying to pronounce all those names. When you see up on the first slide the names of all the authors, this is actually a multi-team organisation work and multi-ethnic background. The senior author, unfortunately, Dr. Eric Pompalampin from the Victorian DPI, couldn't be here today, with much regret. So that's why I'm presenting the work. He's actually a Sri Lankan Australian. The second author is actually an Egyptian New Zealander. I'm not sure about the third author. The fifth author is a Turkish Australian, and I think I'm the only Australian. So thank you. If you consider the ruminant particularly, and you consider the grazing environment under which they exist, they're actually faced with a range of different feed types, which because of that actually intuitively have a different antioxidant status. And that can translate through to the muscle system and ultimately to the meat that you actually end up with. And we know, of course, that dietary vitamins are essential to maintain antioxidant capacity in those body and tissue systems. But if you get an imbalance of those things, you can end up with oxidative stress, which can have some detrimental effects. And that's the background to this work, to look at these compounds called isoprosteins. Those compounds, in fact, are a prostaglandin type compound. They're actually used in the medical world, and this is where they're first used, to identify oxidative stress in humans. And so what we've done in this work is to try and look at those as a biomarker, in this case, small ruminants, sheep. Now, it's no surprise to anyone that discoloration does cost a lot of money to the industry, rapid formation of myoglobin, and therefore discounting of meat, one of the outcomes of oxidative stress. So this is the objective of that work, to determine the levels of this circulating isoprostein and see whether it can actually be used, as I said, as a biomarker to predict changes in traits like colour stability, lipid oxidation of meat under the post-slaughter environment. So this is the experimental design that Eric and his biometrician came up with and applied to this work. 84 second cross lambs, 4 different nutritional treatments with the aim of actually those treatments reflecting different antioxidant status in what the animals are actually consuming, and therefore trying to create differences in the meat we were wanting to test. The treatments are described there. The lambs were fed for 6 weeks with 2 weeks of adaptation to the diets. And the next one will show you a picture of the various treatments. So in the top left-hand corner, you've got the lucerne grazing animals. The top right-hand corner, you've got the ryegrass grazing animals. The bottom left-hand corner, the ryegrass with supplementary, and then the feedlot animals. Again, to create that difference in their levels of things like vitamin E. So they were 4 treatments replicated 3 times within those treatments. So blood samples were collected from these animals over a period of time. The animals were then sacrificed, and various measurements looking at antioxidant potential, and so also lipid oxidation. And samples out of these animals were then subjected to simulated retail display in overwrap packs, and colour stability measured over time, and on top of that, lipid oxidation. With actually some long storage periods. Some of those samples actually aged for 60 days and then displayed. You can see in this slide here some different couple of pieces of different data. So firstly, the vitamin E levels in the tissue of the muscles of these lambs, and not surprisingly, expect in the chlorophyll-filled ryegrass a higher level, and in the feedlot a much lower level. Exactly the sort of difference that we're trying to actually achieve with this design. on what is your right-hand side, then some oxidative measurements in terms of measured by the T-bars methodology, and you can see in fresh meat, not such big differences, and levels that are probably okay in terms of rancidity across the treatments. But then when you actually have aged meat, in this case aged for quite a long time, 60 days, you start to see some very high levels of lipid oxidation occurring, and particularly in the feline animals. Again, not unexpected. So in terms of these compounds, or the one that we measured in this case, which is the 8 isoform, there's different isoforms of this compound, isoprosteins. And you can see, again, what will be on the left-hand side of the slide, the levels of blood isoprosteins measured over time in the plasma. And when you get to that last period between 6 and 8 weeks, you can really see that that diet is having a major effect on the circulating levels of this isoprostein. So what it's indicating is that these animals are coming under the oxidative stress that we were trying to create in this experiment. On the right-hand side is then a plot of the model between isoprostein and lipid oxidation in the samples. You can see there's a lot of variation around the line, but it does have that upward slope. So as that level of isoprostein that's circulating goes up, then it's indicative of greater lipid oxidation. In terms of isoprosteins versus the vitamin E, again on the left-hand side, a slightly downward slope. So as the vitamin E is increasing, the isoprostein's going down, but again there's a lot of variation in the slope. And then, not surprisingly, in the other graph, as vitamin E concentrations going up, driving down lipid oxidation. And we know from other work that Eric has published that if you want to minimise that lipid oxidation, you need to be up around at 3 milligrams per kilo of meat level, and then you can actually increase things like PUFAs without actually getting excessive lipid oxidation. But essentially, from this point of view, biochemically, we got the sort of effect that we're after, indicating that essentially this compound, these isoprosteins, could actually be used as a live animal marker for increasing oxidative stress, and it's positively linked to oxidation in meat. So, as I've said, it could be used as an indirect marker to indicate animals under increasing oxidative stress, and therefore the consequence in terms of lipid oxidation. And that would then relate through to flavour stability, which wasn't tested in this experiment. But if you go back to that graph with long age, when you think about the levels of the T-bars levels there of MDA, they're very high. You would have got a product that wasn't very nice to eat. So there's a lot of people worked on this project. As I said, it's a multifaceted project, not uncommon for us in Australia, often working with different groups, with people that we have good relationships with, and funded in this case by AMPC, Australian Meat Processor Corporation, with funds also coming from MLA, Meat and Livestock Australia, and with that collaboration across the Tasman with Otago University. And the actual isoprosteins analysis was done at Deakin University in the medical school. So again, a wide network of collaborators. As a part of this project funded by AMPC, we have published quite an extensive review, and the details are there for you, that looks at oxidative processes in muscle systems and talks about the different free radicals and their derivation and the relationship back to isoprosteins. As I said, these are used in the medical fraternity for human health. So thank you.